Welcome to our March Event Insider session. I'm so happy to see everybody who is joining us today, and I really appreciate everyone who is taking time out of their schedule to join our session. I'll go ahead and introduce myself today. My name is Becca. I'm going to be the host and moderator for today's Event Insider session. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing the strategies for sourcing the best venues within your event budget, along with our two panelists today. So before today's session, we had 3 session polls for everyone to answer. These polls are still available for everyone to submit their responses. But before our guest panelists join us today, I want to make sure that we share the submitted responses we have so far. So starting out with our first question, we have, what do you want to get most from the session? And so some of the answers we got were knowledge, be more confident in negotiating, negotiation tips and tricks, skills and best tips to negotiate best value, price for the venue, amenities, tech support, negotiation skills for who should provide what's fair to ask, pitfalls, negotiating for best price, and what does the venue need to know from us, then negotiations, tactics, strategies for negotiation, and then a couple others include different perspective on how to select a venue than the current process, insight from others, and venue negotiation tips. So thank you everyone who answered this poll question. The next poll that we asked our attendees today is, what factors weigh most heavily in your decision-making process for venue selection? As you can see here, these 3 were the most popular: cost and budget, location and accessibility, capacity and space layout. And then followed by the other ones, which include flexibility, tech and infrastructure, parking, safety, amenities, and reputation. So thank you all for chiming in there as well. The last poll we wanted to ask our attendees today is, what is your most challenging aspect when sourcing event venues? So some of the answers we got were management, making sure everything is within the budget, walkability for museums, restaurants, or shopping, satisfying the pickiest attendees while keeping costs reasonable, making sure to find cities or states that align with their values but are not too expensive, gauging size, cost, parking, inclusive services, and easy to work with staff. Lack of proximity to venue to see in person. I definitely can see how that would be challenging. The size, location, making sure it's modern and upscale, but also affordable. ESG, some more about size, cost, and then making sure you get the right dates and location. So thank you everyone for sharing on this. We definitely will be covering some of those topics in today's panel as well. Before we begin the panel discussion, I do have one exciting announcement to make. Whova released the call for speakers and abstract system just a couple of weeks ago. So now you can centralize and streamline your call for speakers process, making sure you reduce the number of tools you use. So you can now use Whova to collect submissions, assign reviewers, and communicate decisions all in one place. And if you are interested in learning more, please contact your account manager directly, or if you don't have an account manager yet, you can schedule a one-on-one demo. And then the last thing I want to mention is that if you do want to stay up to date with everything happening with our product, we are constantly working on improving it, including working on adding to our call for speakers feature already. So to stay up to date with our latest releases, you can follow our LinkedIn, check out our newsletter, or you can contact your account manager directly.
If you're interested in viewing more content for event organizers, subscribe to our channel, where we will continue to upload interviews with top event professionals and new content on the latest event industry trends.
So with that being said, it is officially time to start our panel, and we will start by introducing our guest panelists for today. So the first panelist I would like to welcome to our virtual stage is Brook Wyntergreen Olsen. She is the Associate Director of the Global Design Alliance. So Brook, thank you so much for being our guest panelist. We are excited to have you here today. Would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Becca. Thanks, Whova, for having me today. Yep, I'm Brook Wyntergreen Olsen. I live on the West Coast, but put events on all around the United States and Canada, and we'll get more into that later. I've been doing this for a little over 7 years, and I think the biggest differentiator is that I come in the built industry. So I work for and with designers, architects, contractors.
Great. Thank you so much, Brook.
Yeah.
Our next guest panelist here today is Loryn Wellman. She is the CEO of 31102 Events. So Loryn, thank you so much for joining us. It is great to have you joining us today as well. Would you also like to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, thank you again for having me, Becca and Whova. Hey Brook. As she said, my name is Loryn Wellman. I am the CEO and principal planner of 31102 Events. I plan major conferences, trade shows, and small corporate retreats for companies. And I'm excited to be here. Love Whova and excited to share with you guys some tips. So hopefully we can help.
Great. Thank you so much, Loryn. We're super excited to have both of you joining us, and I'm really looking forward to hearing both of your thoughts on today's topic. So we can go ahead and dive in with a couple of our warm-up questions. Loryn, I'm going to start with you first. Can you share a little bit about the events that you have run recently, such as how long they were, number of attendees, whether or not you have multiple sessions at once or exhibitors?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we're just getting into 2024. So I'll go back a little bit to 2023, one of the larger events that we did. So that was the All Black National Convention in Atlanta. It was about 600 attendees there. We did have a main general session in the morning, and then we had breakout sessions in the afternoon running concurrently. So that was a lot of fun. It was really exciting. There was a lot of different just the sessions were really informative, talking about the things that were happening within the Black community, as well as things that we can do to get better, things that we can learn in the economy. And it was really great. We did use Whova on that one as well. And it worked out really well for the speakers, being able to get people where they need to go, the announcements, guiding everybody to where they need to be. Because as you can imagine, getting 600 people to like 5 to 6 different breakouts was a great time. Yeah, that one was really great. And then also I had another smaller event as well, a corporate retreat. I'm sorry if y'all hear the dog in the background. I'm trying to like keep him calm. So if you hear a growl, just but yeah, that's like the main one that I'm gonna go ahead and mute right now, and I'll let Brook, because he's about to start barking.
I have my dog in the back too, so it's a dog day. Yeah, so I am a little bit different from Loryn in that my group tends to be the same size, roughly around 60 people, which is that sweet medium spot where we don't need a large convention center, but we also can't fit into a boardroom. And so that's always a kind of a fun challenge when I'm sourcing venues. And then the other big piece of the puzzle is they're always in a new location. It's rarely that I'll come back to the same town or city. And so I am learning the landscape every single symposium that I put on. And then it's a 4-day event, and it's typically 2 to 3 separate venues with large dinners and small group dinners in the night. So they're like 15-hour days with multiple different variations on venues. And I'll go into more of that when we get into the other questions. What else am I missing, Becca?
Did you have any concurrent sessions at your
Right.
event?
Yes, we do have concurrent sessions, and I have been using Whova to streamline all of this for almost 3 years now, I think. And so we run concurrent sessions, breakout spaces, different locations, different actual parts of the city are the concurrent sections sometimes. And so really kind of wayfinding and navigating is a big piece of our puzzle.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing that. Our next question is, from your experience, what are the biggest challenges that you face when sourcing event venues? Brooke, we'll continue with you first.
Okay. The biggest challenge sort of is that sweet spot that I'm sort of a medium-sized event planner. And so finding a space that's not too voluminous, if that's the right word, like a large seating, I'm not using the right words. Like, we want to be a group that gets together and can converse within the room with each other. And so having that space be approachable and allow us to feel like intimate enough to say, I'll have a conversation with someone over there, and then they can hear the front of the room speakers, and all with meeting a budget. So we don't have a high tech AV team. I'm sort of supporting that in a hamstring sort of way, and we'll get there when we go to the tech portion of that. But The other biggest challenge is always money. We sort of operate like a nonprofit. So I am going in with the dollar being the first priority every single time, but trying to blend that with unique experiences where if we spend a lot of money on this venue, maybe we're saving some money on this venue. And so weaving together the whole week of events in a creative way. Yeah, Loryn, maybe your turn, and then if there's more I can add.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically kind of what Brooke said as well. But then when I work with the larger groups, I think any event planner can attest to this. You have a lot of different personalities. You have a lot of different expectations, not just from the client's perspective, but from the attendee's perspective as well. So obviously, if we're using a hotel, right, they have several different meeting spaces. But again, to Brooke's point, you don't want somewhere that's too large if you don't have like a super big group. So if I'm working with a group of 100 and they have a big ballroom, like how are we going to make like fill up that ballroom, right? So there's not all of those things. And then even with working with the AV, making sure the sound isn't bouncing all over the place and sounding crazy. And I saw somebody put in the chat about, using universities and things, but even with those, like they have specific kind of tighter rules that they have to follow that you typically wouldn't have to follow if you do go to a hotel or a venue, right? Even with the sleeping accommodations, I think that's one of the biggest things that is always, I mean, if there's 600 people, like the last one I was telling you all about, a lot of people were excited about it. They were like, oh my God, it's great. But then we had people who were pulling me to the side like, oh, the housekeeping didn't come at this time. And I'm like, okay, right? So those
I joke that I have 60 brides every single time.
Literally, it's like you can't please everybody. So I think those are the biggest things, is just making sure, like, obviously the meeting space makes sense for your group, but even with the accommodations, like I try and obviously go places. I always say that I would stay, and I tend to have a bougier, palette, we'll say. But that doesn't always necessarily translate. People maybe have a bougier palette than I do, or maybe they don't want something as bougie as, that I'm choosing, right? So, I mean, just dealing with all the personalities and all the expectations, I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to choosing the venue.
Yeah, and the last point I thought too as well is lead times. I'm finding since COVID that our lead times are growing quite a bit. So where I used to be able to book maybe a half a year out, I'm like 9 to 12 months when I'm starting to plan my next event. And so I'm getting off the heels of one and starting another one. And it's you just really want to get a short list out there of availability right away and make sure that you check about the opportunity before even going to kind of investigate further.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Yeah, those are both really good points. Our next question is, in your case, what factors are most heavily weighted in your decision-making process for venue selection and why? Loryn, we can start with you for this one.
I'm sorry, say it one more time. I was reading the chat. I need to stop reading the chat. Sorry.
What factors heavily weigh in your decision-making process for venue selection and why?
So honestly, it's really contingent upon the client, right? Like, what is it that they're looking for? What is it that they need? Is it location? So if they need somewhere that's walkable, they need somewhere that has a lot of restaurants around, a lot of attractions, right? Is that what's going to be the factor? Obviously, I think Brooke had talked about it. Budget is the biggest thing right now that I think we're all facing, is like trying to stay in budget. But it's like, okay, I get it. We're trying to stay in budget, but like you're asking for caviar, but you're, you know what I mean? Like it's that, right? So budget obviously is that. And then again, I think about even accessibility, which a lot of people have not been talking about lately, but that's really important, like having accessibility. And I know we'll talk about that later as well. But really, it really is honestly just contingent upon the budget. Like, what is the budget, and then obviously what their needs are. If they don't really care that stuff is around, maybe they want to be in nature. So, I have specifically right now, I'm working with the client. They want somewhere that's like 30 minutes to an hour from the airport. They want to be in nature, right? They have a budget, but they're like, I mean, but if it's doing this, like we'll go over budget. So it really is just contingent upon the client, to be honest with you.
For sure. Brooke, what about you?
Yeah, super great points. Agreed with all of that. I also wrote down that for us, daylight, fresh air, and I call them killer columns. So lines of sight within your space. Those tend to be immediate things that I'm like checking the box. If those things exist or don't exist, I don't follow into it. I don't follow up with any further than that. And I really just feel like having operable windows or an ability to have lunch on a porch, if you're staying in one space for a full day and you got 9 hours in that day, people get fatigued, they stop paying attention to the speakers. And so really just kind of thinking about creative spaces that don't look so colonial, like stuffy classic kind of a thing. So
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. That's a really good point, especially I know since you've told me in the past that design is a big part for your group as well.
yeah.
Yeah, so with those points in mind, I do want to hear from both of you about your strategies for negotiating with venues. And I know that from our polls, our audience is really excited to hear from this as well. So starting off with, I know that negotiating with venue vendors can be pretty intimidating. What specific tactics have you used to negotiate lower venue rates without compromising on the essential amenities or services? Brooke, we can go to you first.
Sure. So I think you have to have a sense of where when you're scouting your venues, you have to have a sense. If it's a convention center, that price tag's higher. If you're at a library, you tend to have a lot better pricing, but more restrictions or university, like Loryn was saying. And so kind of knowing you're going to be either talking about money or you're going to be talking about logistical constraints kind of allows you to go into the beginning of the conversation where you know what your negotiation tactics are going to be. And I think the most simple tactic I have is if I know that I'm already dealing with a high price tag, I lower my budget price tag significantly. And I just say, this is where we are. And my ceiling is actually never where we really are. My ceiling is probably here, but this is where you start. And so then you get to understand every single cost that you will have in there. AV, catering, an operator, like labor operations, any of that. And so you really want to know what all of those numbers are. And then you say, this hits, but I can't have it all. So what do we do?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Brooke. Loryn, can you share some of your tactics as well?
Yeah, no, all of those that Brooke said are good. And I think one of the things, and I was sharing this with you too, Becca, I think one of the things with negotiation, people get intimidated because they feel like it's this big thing. But one of the things that I always say to people, I go in and ask for the most outrageous things because it's going to get me to where I need to be, right? So if I know that I don't have like a large room block, right, but I want some comp suites, I'll say, okay, I want 3 comp suites. Knowing good and well, they're probably not going to give me 3. They'll say, okay, well, we'll give you 3 upgrades to that, which is what I wanted anyway, right? Because I'm still getting what I want, right? And then when I go into negotiating, I always look at it as like, this is going to be a relationship that I'm going to have for a long time, whether I choose that venue or not. I think when I realize is that when I treat salespeople like that, and as if like, hey, we're partnering together on this, even if I'm talking to 10 different venues, we're all friends, we're all going to be here for the long run. If I'm going in like that, 9 times out of 10, they're going to give me what I want. And I think, again, with negotiation, it's just asking for what you want, right? Like all they can say is no, or they can come and they can give you, again, what you want. So if I say I want this room for $10,000, but I know that it's 50, they might come back and say, okay, well, we'll give it to you for 30. I still got what I wanted, right? But, I think it's the biggest thing is people are just afraid to ask, or they just don't know what to ask. And I always say, like, if your list is this long, start with the list this long, but have the things that it's like, I really want these 5 things. So if they come back and say, okay, I have 30 things on the list, they gave me these 10, but these are the 5 that I wanted, then now you negotiate those 5 things you wanted, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing is it's not like, it's really just asking a question. All they can say is no. No is not going to hurt you. No is not going to ruin you. No is not going to send you down a spiral. It's just a word. It's okay if they say no. And if they say no, go back and negotiate for what you want. But I always start outrageous. It's going to get me to what I want. And then you come in and like, we're in this partnership. How can we make this a partnership? And 9 times out of 10, you're going to get what you want.
I love the partnership piece of that. Yeah. I have one small thing that just happened to me this week, but I wanted to share it, and it was a new bag of tricks for me. My colleague said, channel your inner Georgia peach, right? So we're deep into the planning here, and this is not a big venue selection thing, but this is a tour that we're trying to negotiate with a really famous institute. And the time frame didn't work with our established program. And so what I did, I'm not used to saying sorry. What I did was I said, hey, can you help me? I'm really in a bind. I'm in a jam. We've got people flying in. I can't move my time frame around. This is so important to our group. And like, I really kind of sang a song, and I said, we'd be happy to contribute, like donate to your institution, like just really make it about, like she's saying, a relationship, a partnership, and that you're human and that this is really important to you. And hopefully they can help because people want to help you. So.
Exactly. And I'm from Georgia, so I agree with the Georgia Peak.
It's fun one. I was like, this is new. I like this.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's a really good example. Thank you so much, Brooke. Loryn, I want to follow up on something that you said. What are some specific things that you've requested that may seem outrageous but had resulted in a better deal?
So at the last one that I had that I was telling you guys about, so I think I asked for like 10 ultra sweets. I'm not gonna get 10, but guess what? They gave us 6.
That's
And
amazing.
guess who got a sweet? Me, right? So I knew they were not gonna give us 10, but they gave us 6 for free, and then they gave us 3 like upgraded ones, right? So, something like that. I'm like, they're not gonna give me this, but I knew I wanted one for myself. I knew I wanted one for the CEO and like some of the other people on the team. So I got the 6 that I wanted, and they gave us 3 just like able to upgrade to that, right? So that's something I always ask for. Something that people don't typically think about is shipping, right? Like when you want to ship things to the hotel, holding things at hotels for whatever reason costs a lot of money. So I always ask for like, we want this amount of pounds of shipping, which because 9 times out of 10, I know I'm not going to get that much, or I'm going to get right to that amount. So I always ask for the amount that I think I'm going to have in pounds and try and get that for free. And that typically is one people don't think about. Even with parking, like trying to get parking for the team for free. Obviously, 9 times out of 10, they'll give you discount parking, but it's like, hey, I actually need like 20 parking passes for free. They're probably going to give me 10, which I typically get, right? Just like those little things that people don't think about. Even like with the housekeeping, like making sure that these particular set of rooms have housekeeping every day, unless we tell them we don't want housekeeping. Trying to get as much early check-in as possible because obviously people are going to be flying in and out. So those small things, like people think about the big things like the 1 in 30, which those are great, right? You still do want those, but I always ask for 80% or less attrition. Like I'm not doing 90% attrition. That's never going to happen.
That was exactly what I was going to add to that. Yep.
It's never going to happen. 80% is like the minimum. I'm never doing 90%.
Yeah. They always start at 90 and I usually get down to 85. So good for you, Loryn, for getting to 80. That's awesome.
I'm like, I'm never doing 90. Like, it's never gonna happen. Not on my watch. Because what? No.
I also often ask for them to honor the block rate 3 days post and 3 days prior so that folks can extend their stay and enjoy their time at a nice rate.
Absolutely. I agree.
Definitely. And you can get into the contract and get into the little ticky tacky and say, hey, I don't want the porterage fee, like waive that. You can get rid of these little things that start to add up to your bottom line quite quickly.
And then even AV, something as well. Oh, yeah. We don't use, because everybody on here knows AV in-house can be expensive. Yeah. So I always ask like, hey, if we don't use your AV, I need you to waive the fee if you have a fee for us to bring in our own AV company. That's something people don't think about too, because that can be unnecessarily high for any. It's like, no, I can bring in my own AV. I'm not paying you $3,500 to bring in somebody else. That's silly. So always, if you can, get that waived too.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you both. Brooke, I want to go back to you. How do you leverage your event's unique selling points to get more favorable terms or amenities with venue providers?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that one. I think for us, we approach it as a designer. We're a group of designers. This space is really important to us. Hopefully one of our team members actually worked on the project or the space or is tangential to like the town. We're always visiting towns where folks have offices. And so we're really leveraging, like Loryn saying, that relationship. And so it's really important. I got this amazing space in New York City because one of our firms did the design work, and then it got canceled because of COVID. 2 years later, we were able to go back and they honored the same rate, and it was insane. It was because of the relationships. So I do that. I also try to do, if it is like a event space or like a performance hall or something like that, I try to say, can we give our group of designers a tour of your space? Can you guys show us at the campus, and that way that it's an education opportunity for our designers and they can spread the word. I say, we come from across the United States and Canada. There's a lot of visibility that's happening always from the design standpoint is my argument. But lastly, most recently I was in Vancouver, and we were able to get the convention center, which was amazing for our group of our size. But we had a relationship, and we asked the convention center's marketing team to come and present at our sessions so that we could learn from them. So I tried to integrate them in to our program, so they really felt like they were a part of us and that we were learning from them. And they also brought in like their stormwater management group, and we ended up getting a tour to like the back end systems, mechanical systems of the convention center, it's just a unique thing. But there was really like a weaving in of the place that we were staying and interacting with, and that seems to help form that relationship, and then talk about money after that. So
For sure. Loryn, what about you on this one?
Sorry, say the question for me one more time. I want to make sure I'm answering it right.
How do you leverage your event's unique selling points, negotiate better terms, amenities, et cetera, with the new providers?
So I think kind of what Brooke said, right, is like figuring out how we can bring them in, right? And then explaining obviously what's happening in the event and how it would benefit the venue that we're doing, right? So for example, the one I was telling you guys about, the All Black National Convention, the general manager at that hotel was a Black woman, right? And so just explaining to her like, hey, this is what's coming into the venue. This is what can happen. This is what's going to be shown around the venue. So you can show that you are inclusive, because right, like that's a big thing, diversity, inclusion, that's kind of like the buzz topic right now. Like, we are open to these businesses, to small businesses, to minority owned businesses, right? So kind of explaining what the benefit is of us coming in there. And I love what Brooke said is like having them come and do a presentation. We just had an event where the mayor of we were at, where we at? Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the mayor of Albuquerque came in and spoke to the group about just the history of Albuquerque. And it was really, really nice for him to be there and meet everybody. And we were able to get some discounts because of that, right? And being able to go to different restaurants and places that were really, I guess they were native and local, obviously, to Albuquerque and what their history was. So it was really good. So I think just kind of explaining like, hey, this is the benefit of us coming in here. And then like Brooke said, I love like bringing them in and saying, well, you can explain and say like, this is our history. And so people are really involved in the process, right? So they're like, oh, wow, like we're at this hotel or we're at this venue and it's this and it's that, or the mayor came and I met the general manager. So I think just ingraining the two, which is really, really good, which is what Brooke said.
Absolutely. Thank you, Loryn. I do see a lot of questions coming in the Q&A. So we're going to continue on to our technology section to make sure we have time at the end to get to some of these questions. I know that tech can play a really important part in making sure that the venue fits your event. So I want to start by asking if you guys can provide specific examples of how you used event apps, kiosks, or any other similar tech to make sure the attendee experience and engagement is the best possible at venues. Loryn, we'll go to you first for this one.
Yeah, so obviously Whova, right? So I've been using Whova for most of my clients, and not all of them, for 2 or 3 years now. And so it just streamlines the registration process. So now we don't have to get like the laptops. They literally just use it on their phone, check people in. We have everybody download the app. And so like I was telling you guys, the announcements are like, oh my gosh, like sending the announcements on site, like, hey, we're about to start a session. Hey, this session's over here, especially when you have those congruent sessions going on. Right. And so saying like, hey, this session is over here. This one's over here. And then obviously we have people on site who are directing them. But if it can come straight to their phone and say, hey, we're starting the session in 30 minutes. We're starting the session in 10 minutes. We're doing this, or any changes that we have, we're able to change in the agenda really quickly. And so those are like, when I tell you, I mean, I could talk about Whova all day, obviously, but it really has just helped streamline the process. Because I just remember when we used to have paper registrations, we used to do it on Excel, and I'm like, what in the world? But yeah, it just makes it so much easier. Even the speakers, I love that the speakers are able to go in and update their own profile. Because if we know anything about speakers, they're all just so busy and they can never check their email and they can never do this, right? And so they're able to go in and update their own profile, and they're able to connect with people on the app. I love that they're able to have their communities on the app. So they're able to have meetups in person. So yeah, that's like the biggest thing, is obviously using Whova. We have used some of the touch screens for like wayfinding. The social media wall is always a big hit, because we're able to put it up on the screen so people are able to put their pictures. But yeah, really, I mean, Whova. Just Whova.
For sure. Thank you, Loryn. Brooke, can you share the role of tech at your event as well?
Yeah, I mean, 1000% echo what Loryn's saying. Whova, eliminated redundancy and the ability to make live changes to your agenda, and nobody knows because they're not following, they don't have it memorized, but you're shifting things around like game day changes, and it's seamless. So that's amazing. One time back in New York, I was given the announcements, like, you have to take the C train to get to lunch over here, and so folks were able to navigate the subway system because of Whova's announcements. So it was really effective, or it is really effective. What else? Let me see. I was going to show you guys my map, but I could do that now or in the next question. So this is a technological piece that I use with Whova for wayfinding, because we have so many different locations within a city that we're going to in 4 days. And so, Becca, if you don't mind, I'll do a quick share of the screen and show you
Yeah,
guys.
go for it, because I think this will cover the next question as well.
I think it is for the next question, but I'm just going to go now.
Yeah,
so
go for it.
Okay, so am I sharing the right screen? I am. Okay, great. Okay, so it looks better on the phone. 100% of our attendees use the phone, but I can't do this right now. So I'm showing you guys the web app version. So the map is actually on the phone a lot cooler, because you can use your fingers to pinch and zoom and stuff like that. So what I've done, this is our floor map. I renamed it Week at a Glance. So it's in our resources and it's our floor map. And you can see all of the different offices that our member firms have within the city. We're in San Diego next week. And so you can see all of the different restaurants we're going to be at. And we're staying in La Jolla. And so it's like this walkable area. And we're trying to keep people from using too much greenhouse gases with their cars and being able to walk everywhere. You can see the tours we're going to have. And then again, the mobile app is a little bit better than the web app. So you can click on this and it will give you the address right there. So it works a little bit more efficient on mobile, but I'm just showing you guys how we do it. And so I have a graphic designer pull this together for me, and it looks different in like each event that we put on. You can see your bike tours, you can just kind of use that. And for one of them, let's see, what did this one come from? So we're doing this tour at the Salk Center. And so you can call it your Salk tour, and then you click on that and you can pin it to a map. And then you can click on that map and you can, it'll jump you to Google Maps. So you could grab an Uber or you could walk, you can get your directions that way. So yeah, just wanted to share that bit of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brooke. I know that's a really good example of like how you were able to use it for managing different venues throughout the event as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So for our audience here, both of our panelists have managed a lot of venues in their event planning experience. And I do want to move on to some of the things that event organizers maybe should watch out for when selecting venues. So I want to start by asking Loryn, what are the top 3 mistakes that are commonly made during venue selection, and how do you avoid them?
Ooh, top 3 mistakes. I would say, and I think I kind of touched on it before, not asking for what you want or just accepting anything when you know you want more. The second thing would be, and this is in no particular order, y'all. The second thing would be to not read every single line of that contract. A lot of times, Brooke is laughing because she knows. Because a lot of times, like, you get the contract, but you don't read every single little thing. And there's some random thing in there that says, if you don't do this, then you got to pay $2,500. And you're like, excuse me, what? So not reading the contract thoroughly. And then number 3, what would be number 3? I know this is going to sound cliche and it kind of sounds like number 1, but like really negotiating, like never take, it's almost like a job, right? Like when you get a job, they always say never take the first offer. And so like not reading the contract, not asking for what you want, and not negotiating when you get like the first offer, because they're always going to give more. They're always willing to give more. They love to play hardball. But again, if you go in kind of with that relationship mindset, they're more than willing to give you what they want, but also read that contract. And I mean line for line. Because I've had some times when I'm like, no, we're going to take that out of here.
Absolutely. Brooke, what can you add to that?
Yeah, I love that. All of hers are spot on. I wrote mine down, and every single one of all 3 points start with hidden. So hidden catering costs. One time I didn't read, it was per consumption, and they were like $6 cans of Perrier, and like, I'm just thinking, I got this bill and I thought, what the heck? I did not see that coming. Hidden AV costs. That one was a big learning point, especially when you're in a more integrated space, like a university or something where they just build it in, and if you don't read every line of that contract, you're getting a tab that you didn't expect to see. And then the last one is hidden additional taxes, services, and labor. You can add 26% to any number that you're looking at just to get your budget set, and then you just got to make sure that they're not hiding, or that they haven't added labor in deep into those languages. And taxes. Yeah. Just look at your like service fees, city fees, state fees. I mean, there can be like 3 to 5 taxes that are adding to the bottom line. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Brooke. Can you share a specific instance where overlooking a venue's logistical constraints led to any operational challenges during the event, and then what type of things you did to prevent it in the future?
Am I going next?
Yes.
Okay. Acoustics. I've had some nightmare situations where you end up in a tiled floor with a tiled ceiling, and your crowd just starts talking louder to compensate for the echo and vibration in that room. Everyone's walking out of there with a headache, and they don't know why they feel so tired. So I think acoustics are something I'm always looking at. Also, if you do a DIY project, which sometimes we really have to roll up our sleeves because we don't have the budget to buy something. Like one time we turned a shop fabrication into a restaurant. And I think I was mentioning this to you, Becca. I ended up calculating the ounce pours of our alcohol because I needed to get the budget number, and I was building a bar and I'd never done anything like that. So all of a sudden, what should be an easy, a cheap fix ended up like my price tag. My labor went up because that took so much of my time. So if you're going to look in an untraditional way, make sure that you know what your kind of main pillars are, what your main needs are, and that you're not going to end up in the weeds because of that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I do want to move on to the legal side of the venue selection, just to ask a little bit, and then I know we have some Q&A on this as well, so we'll probably get into it a little bit more there. But Brooke, this will be for you as well. When you are negotiating with venue providers, do you have any contract clauses that you, from your experience, will best protect your interests and minimize liability? And if you've encountered any legal challenges with venue contracts, how they were resolved?
I think this one may be lobbying over to Loryn, because I haven't really had a huge legal issue. I think that might be because of our group size. We don't have any pyrotechnics on stage. So I've really not like ran into anything huge that I could give a takeaway on for that. So why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so same, I'm with Brooke, but I think it's because I read every line of the contract, right? So I read every line of the contract, and if something doesn't make sense, we take it out. So specifically, there was an event I have coming up in May, and it was something about the catering. It was like an added catering cost. And I was like, we need to take this out, or we need to add in the verbiage that if I don't give this to you, within 10 days, then you can give us this cost. Because it was something outrageous that we had to give it to them in 60 days. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. No. So like, again, those kind of like little things, but it wasn't, but I caught it because I read every line of the contract. So if you don't read those things, then you can run into those legal issues, having to pay those added costs afterwards, they're coming 10 days before asking you for $10,000 for something that you didn't see in there. So again, I luckily haven't ran into it, but it's because I did my due diligence on the front end.
I guess there was one legal side where they wanted me to have a professional services or some sort of liability binder for our group because we were doing a yoga class. And I said, listen, we're gonna be in like our business casual yoga. We're not gonna be doing headstands. So I had to sit there and kind of go back and forth with their team to make sure that they could take that out of our contract because I wasn't gonna buy, risk insurance for our minimal yoga class. So
now, I will say there is a group I'm dealing with currently. We had to add like a data protection clause because the last company who they had dealt with, who did their event, had some type of breach. And so we had to add that into there of like the way that we were able to share their information with any vendor outside of ourselves. And so, if you do have something like that, if you are concerned about some type of data breach or something like that, or if you have some type of information that may be a little bit more sensitive, then I would say add something like that. But otherwise, like if you read the contract, you can know what to add, whether it's like an extra COVID clause or taking out some stuff from the COVID clause because now it's 2024. But if you read that contract, you can be like, this doesn't make sense and start crossing stuff out.
For sure. Yeah, thank you both for sharing a little bit about your experience with that as well. For our last topic today, I do want to hear from you a little bit about the sustainability and accessibility at venues. So starting off with, can you speak a little bit about how event venues accommodate sustainability and what type of specific sustainability practice you're looking for when you're evaluating different venues and making sure they align with your event goals? Loryn, we can start with you.
So I know that's like a hot topic about sustainability. So even when I think about sustainability, I think about it from like a wellness perspective, almost kind of what Brook was talking about. A lot of people are looking for, I'll say specifically within the conference space that I've been dealing in, they want more wellness stations. And what does that look like? Are they using, not the paper straws, but are they not using plastic straws? Do they have any metal straws that they can use? In the wellness stations, are they using alkaline water? Just different things. Are they, I'm just trying to think from a conference perspective. So for me, like when I'm looking at the venue, I look at it more from, again, the accessibility stand side and not necessarily sustainability side. Because a lot of those sustainability stations we create within inside of the conference. But I do realize people do, like if I'm talking about a hotel, right? Like they're looking at if they have like the mini soaps versus the ones that are in the bathroom, right? Like people care about those things like, oh my God, look at these little soaps that they're having. But then some people want the mini soaps because of COVID, right? So again, that's that kind of, how do we create a space of wellness for people, whether it is a breastfeeding station for a mother, whether it's a wellness bar that has, your fruit and waters, and not necessarily sustainability from the venue side for me, because we create those with inside the conference. So Brooke probably has a little bit more, she probably has a better answer for this one.
Well, those are really great points. I come from the built industry, and the built industry is responsible. I think we're the second largest leading contributor to greenhouse gases in the world. So we are all dialed in and focused on sustainability. It's a huge piece of our puzzle, as well as ESG, but I'll focus on the sustainability part. We did some benchmarking for my group because we do this for buildings that we build. So we looked at what putting on an event actually does in terms of greenhouse gases. And the two top contributors are our travel, which we can't eliminate to get to our event, and our food consumption. And so I'm actually measuring our food consumption for each of our events that we put on in terms of how much fish versus red meat are we eating, how much plant-based food versus food that's getting shipped in, local the type of food, and like we're actually quantifying that number and benchmarking it for each of our events, which is cool because when you get a really progressive city like Vancouver, BC, they have waste management. They have like a written document about their food waste, and so we know exactly where all their food waste is going, and we can calculate that. And I think we're really trying to move the needle and looking at our food consumption as a way of being more sustainable. And so it's a pretty cool thing that I think I'm about 3 events into and starting to build data on. And I'm happy to follow up with anyone if they have questions on that. So
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Brooke. Our last question for today's panel is going to be about the accessibility. So have you encountered any challenges related to ensuring accessibility at venues? And then how do you incorporate the considerations for accessibility as well as steps that event organizers can take to make sure it meets the standard? Brooke, we can start with you.
yeah, I think our first stop is just around education and awareness in terms of accessibility. So what we do at every one of our events and every different venue that we're at is a land acknowledgement, acknowledging kind of who were the first peoples before we sat in this really fancy building. We do look at LGBTQ, women-owned, BIPOC-owned venues and put that in our selection criteria. We try to create a psychologically safe space and what that might look like for people who are coming to our event and the knowledge that they're sharing and the repercussions that that could have to some folks within the room. And so I think those are kind of awareness pieces. And then, I mean, there's ADA accessibility where I put someone with a bum leg up a flight of stairs at a restaurant, and that didn't go over real well. So you kind of you gotta look at the physical and the psychological.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Loryn, how do you approach accessibility at your events?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Because like you said, you're like, oh, great. Let me just put you up my shoulder and take you upstairs.
Yeah, I'll just fireman you up the stairs.
Yeah, I've definitely carried some strollers down the stairs, so I understand. But I think even like, you know, like Brooke was saying, like just kind of looking at the whole overall. But even in the beginning, and that's, you know, when you're going into that negotiation, having those relationships, like, hey, let's talk about the accessibility a little bit. Like, what does this look like if I have someone who is blind coming in? If I have someone who's hard of hearing, is this going to be, like Brooke said, if I have a tile and I have, you know, cement all over the place, like how is that going to sound to them, right? Thinking about all those different factors. And is this, the sessions, are they going to offend someone if it is LGBTQ, if it is women? You know, I had a panel one time, it was a men's panel, and he just said some things that we were like, ooh. Like, probably he was an older gentleman, and you know, we were like, hey, you know, so I kind of had to cut it short. I was like, okay, like, you know, because I could see the women in the audience just getting, you know, like, but even having those conversations, like, hey, I love that, you know, I'm not gonna like censor what you say, but like just be aware that there are 80% of women in this room. So when you make certain comments, you're not gonna get the response that you think you're gonna get unless you're trying to get that response, right? But we even having those conversations up front with speakers, right? So just making sure that everyone is included. I have had at the last conference that I had, we had this blind couple that were super sweet, but we knew they were coming because we asked up front. So when they came to registration, we had someone ready, able to guide them, and they were able to get around all weekend. They had an amazing time. They said they didn't have a problem with the Whova app, which was great. But just making sure that they were taken care of. We had certain seats for them. So just thinking about all the different people and all the different things that could happen. And I always am thinking about who can get offended. I know we live in a world where everybody can get easily offended, but at the same time, like if I know that somebody is like controversial, or I know somebody may say something crazy, either it's like, do we need this person, or just, you know, have a conversation with that person ahead of time, and 9 times out of 10, it'll be fine.
Yep. Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you both for your insights on this one. This is going to wrap up our panel discussion. So following our schedule, we're going to go to the live audience questions. And for this, either of you just feel free to jump in as I go through the questions. So the first one we have today is from Jenny, and it says, are you finding that venues are requiring higher and earlier deposits than pre-COVID?
Yep. The answer is yep. My hotel this is a most recent one. I was requested to put 50% of our room block down. I've never had that, and that's a big dent on the cash flow. I was like, there's no way we're a lean organization. Like you're denting our operational budget at this point. And so I negotiated. I just said, we can't, let's drop that number. I'll give you 10% at this point. And so they honored it, but I was shocked to see that come in. Yeah.
For sure. Our next question is, within hotel contracts, what small print or legal speak items should I be careful of?
So I think what Brooke said, like just those hidden fees, hidden catering fees, AV is like the main one. Again, making sure that they're not trying to charge you some astronomical fee if you do want to bring in your own AV. Wi-Fi, something people
Yeah.
don't do all the time. Wi-Fi will get you.
Good one.
Wi-Fi will get you. They'll be like, oh, it's just $20 per connection. And it's like, but I have 500 people.
Yeah, that is such a good one. That one is
Yeah.
popping up more. Yeah.
Yeah, Wi-Fi will get you. So I would always try and negotiate in your concessions. Some like if you have a team, if you know you need like 20, you need some for your team, and then for the AV production, try and get like 20 Wi-Fi codes if you can, and then everybody else, like, it's unfortunate, but whatever. So Wi-Fi is a big one. Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, but but Wi-Fi is a big one that will get you every single time that people do not think about.
It's great.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. As a follow-up question to that one, this is also from LQ. Do hotels ever give more discounts if you advertise them as a partner or sponsor, and how receptive are they to that? Do either of you have experience with that?
We don't really do sponsors, so no.
I've never had like a hotel sponsor. I've had them like do room blocks, but I've never had them like sponsor per se. But I will say, like, if I've done a bigger room block, obviously they give a bigger discount, but I've never had experience with them sponsors. So maybe try it out and let us know. Okay.
Yeah.
Jenny also said, as a 501c3 nonprofit, they're always looking for budget-friendly options and are able to save a lot in states where tax or sales tax can be waived or avoided, and asks if you have any recommendations for states to consider that are easy to waive sales tax.
Oh. I say we operate as a 501c3, but we are not one, so I have not ever been able to hook that. So I don't, but I would lead that you are a nonprofit every single time that you start your negotiations.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have an event in Georgia, and it's a nonprofit as well, and they're able to waive it. But like Brooke said, lead with that and just ask them.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to outright let you know.
Okay. Rachel said that her event is considering moving cities after a few years in their current location. Could you talk more about the process of finding a venue in a city that you're not currently in?
Yeah.
I look at ease. A lot of our folks are coming from East Coast, West Coast, Canada, America. So I look at ease of travel. Like, is there a hub for your airlines? Look at Denver, Chicago. Those seem to be like really easy to get to. And look at the city itself. Can you get into the city, out of the city without a lot of travel and traffic? Kind of look at your time frame and your travel as a starting point, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely say, like, like she said, ease of travel. If you know where most of your attendees are coming from, where your client is coming from, right? Like, you want to take that into consideration. What's the budget? So, for example, if you know you don't have a high budget, I would never suggest you to go to Miami because it's very high. I just did an event there for 20 people, and we were like, it costs how much, right? Yeah. So looking at your budget, also understanding kind of what they want, what they need. So again, if they want to go somewhere that they can do a yacht, then yes, you go to Miami, but you're not going to send them to like Idaho, right? And even because pretty much all of the events that I do are not, I live currently in Charlotte, and none of the events that I have are in Charlotte. So all of the events that I have are out of state or out the country. And so making sure you have, again, and I keep harping on relationships, because you need to have a relationship with someone at the venue, whoever your event planner is, kind of that boots on the ground. So even if it's like, hey, can you FaceTime me and we can do a virtual view of like the room before you're making the decision? Because of course, pictures are beautiful and it looks great, but sometimes you need, like, I need to see the room. I need to see the ceiling heights. I need to see what's going on with the carpet. I need to see how far it is from the guest rooms to the meeting room right. So making sure that you're doing that and asking those questions ahead of time, because it is hard when you can't do a site visit sometimes, or if your client doesn't have the budget to do it. But if you have someone, you can say, hey, well, can you call me and FaceTime me? Can we do a virtual tour? I just want to see it. Or if you have someone in the city who you trust, whether it's a colleague or, you know, maybe another event planner who you know will go do it for you, like that's really important too. So I would definitely say, like, if you can get boots on the ground, that's going to help you 20 times over.
For sure. Yeah.
High five, high 10, all of that. That's perfect.
Dana asked, regarding proximity to the airport, how are you estimating flight costs if the event is 9 to 12 months out?
Yeah. So currently, I am working with a company called Allfly, and they will do a flight forecast for you, which is great. And so that's how we're able to determine pricing. Obviously, that can change based on when they decide to book the flights. But if you can find a company like an Allfly or some type of company that can kind of do that legwork for you, it makes it a lot easier for you to put it in your budget to say, hey, here's the average price, but always add like a 20% on there in case it goes up or down, because you know these prices are looking like mortgages, right? So just making sure that you are like, I'm trying to forecast and just being honest, right, with your client to say like, hey, I know we're 12 months out. The flight is looking like this right now, but if you don't book for 6 months, it may go up $600. And so just kind of being honest with them and having that like open dialogue. And again, if you can work with a company like that who can do the forecasting for you, it makes it that much easier.
Absolutely. LQ also asks if you have more tips like attrition asks, such as the no more than 80 to 85%.
I think like we said, so attrition, yeah, definitely no more than 80 to 85. Wi-Fi, like I said, that because that one will get you every time. I always ask for either comp upgrades or like just complimentary suites, whether it's for the CEO or, you know, whoever you have a keynote speaker or something like that. Shipping, again, making sure like I'm able to ship things in, they're able to hold it and not charge me an arm and a leg. Parking passes for the team. I always ask for them to waive the meeting room if we meet the food and beverage minimum. I always ask for it. Always. And if they can't waive it, 9 times out of 10, they'll lower it. And they'll lower the food and beverage. And if they say, well, we can't do that, I'm like, okay, well, can you lower the food and beverage minimum? And 9 times out of 10, they'll lower the food and beverage minimum.
And if you're getting stuck in those like real sticky spots, like I asked them, can you comp the coffee and water? You know, it's coffee, water, and tea, like just things that they don't need to measure, you know, and so they typically will take that off for you.
Exactly, little stuff like that. I'm trying to think what else. Like I said, early check-ins, if available. What's something else that's like small?
And the Wi-Fi, it's huge.
Yeah, that Wi-Fi will get you every time. Waiving the AV cost if they have one. Or if they can't waive it, lowering the cost, because sometimes it's like $5,000. I'm not paying that. So either waive it, or even if they drop it to like $1,500, then fine. Like, you know, because 9 times out of 10, y'all know the AV companies that are connected to the venues are very, 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 very high. So trying to get that cost waived. I think those are the main like kind of small things that people don't think about. I always ask for like 1 in 30 for the rooms, depending on how big the room block is. Even like something that people don't ask is like, hey, can you throw in like 1 free catered lunch for me?
Oh,
like, something like that, right? Because again, if you have a $10,000 food and beverage minimum, they don't care about your $1,000 lunch. They really don't.
Yeah, and I always under budget my head counts for food too. Like if you've got a group of 60, I get meals for 55 because I hate to see food waste and people don't eat it all. And it saves pennies.
For sure. Well, going along with that question, we have one from LQ asking, what is the norm for beverage on consumption, coffee per person or tower, in regards to hidden costs?
I think I just kind of saw that last time is just look at your per consumption contract, because that'll get you right away if you don't have your banquet check written out.
Yeah. I mean, just understanding what the consumption costs are and obviously the taxing on it as well. Because you're like, oh, it's only $6. And then it's like a 36% event tax. And you're like,
I also do for our evening ones where there's a lot of drinking happening. I also asked the bartender to let me know when we've reached a limit, and at that time, I will say I'm switching to non-host. And so that works really well for me not to break my budget.
Absolutely.
For sure. Okay, it is officially a couple minutes after the hour, so it is time to wrap up today's session. Thank you to all our audience members who submitted questions, and I'm sorry to those of you who we didn't have time to get to. But thank you so much, Brooke and Loryn, for being our guest panelists. I know that I really appreciated the insights you shared, and I'm sure our audience did as well. And to our audience members, thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts, asking great questions as well. It was a pleasure hosting this session, and I hope you had a great time learning from our guest panelists on today's topic as well.